Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. This is a little bit of a something different from the VHS this week. It's kind of an off-the-record chat with a member of the preservation community more broadly. And we don't really know what to call this section yet, or if this section even has a name. I'm hoping that future Michael will provide with a suitable pun. So I was joined by Joe Dickens. He's a member of the curatorial and engineering team at the NVM. He also works as a lecturer at Confetti at Nottingham Trent University. And he also is the mastermind behind Gamer, a comedy panel show using games starring comedians. I hope he likes that reductive way that I've cast Gamer. But we had a really interesting chat about preservation, about arcade preservation, about his work with the museum, about his work with Gamer and sort of the history behind it. And luckily, we recorded it for you. So enjoy.
Okay, so with the work at the NVM, I want to specifically talk about the engineering side of it. So obviously at the gallery on the floor, we have a load of machines all operating at the same time, all of them of different ages and for different eras. So how difficult is that to keep them running, and what problems do you have when you're doing that work?
We have a myriad of problems, and a lot of them are pretty boring. As in, our buttons stop working, we need to replace a micro switch or something like that. There's now and again we have an exciting one. For example, we have a game called Gunblade, and the first time we turned that on, it burst into flames. It turned out it had 80s dust inside it, or 90s dust. Yeah, 90s dust. That's the most flammable one, right? Had a load of dust from the 90s. So we found out what had burnt, and it was a little board that was kind of giving power to the CRT projector. It's got like a rear projector thing on there. We worked out that the bit that burst into flames wasn't really needed, so we kind of just like cut the board in half. Then where the fuse was, I kind of had that bit floating, and we resoldered everything up. So it's all working now, but there's still half of it missing. That's still there.
That's crazy.
I mean, we cleaned it out afterwards. We didn't go, oh, let's just turn it back on. Like we then got we got natural fiber brushes and swept every bit of dust off it. The only thing that really needs replacing on it now is a fan, where whenever you turn it on, people think they're going to hear like down. That's like the base of it, but all you hear is of a fan that's underneath it. So if I replace that, it's going to be chef's kiss amazing.
How difficult on a scale of 1 to chef's kiss will it be to replace that part? Is that going to be?
It's I understand what you're saying there, because a lot of parts are usually, you just have to put your hand past that jagged bit of metal. But luckily, this fan is in like an easy to get to place, so it's just a big fan, and we haven't really had the time to do that because too many buttons keep breaking. So we're constantly on button watch.
It must be. That sounds like that whole thing sounds like an issue that isn't something that you can find easily on a forum. Do you know what I mean? So like arcade communities must really like be built on trial and error of like restoring and maintaining these machines.
Yeah, there's the old boys who they've been doing stuff from ages ago. And generally, you get people from the community who were there when it all happened, and they'll try and pass on as much as they can. But from dealing with old arcade owners, they generally, when the thing became it didn't really generate them much profit, they just took it out and burnt it. It's like all these old arcade machines that just got burnt around the back. And then there's the current collectors and all the people now who have a bit of an expendable income. They go, I want an arcade machine, and end up getting one of these bar top things and stuff. But they're obviously upset that all these things are set on fire. So some of them, we'll get some information from those kind of people. Other people will learn or find stuff online, like there's diagrams. But the community has become a lot better in the last few years. I can remember when I first started fixing stuff, yeah, there was nowhere to find stuff. You just had to kind of go around everywhere and like just see if there's anyone who could help you at all. And if not, you have to. It was very much a level of trial and error. But now, yeah, there's Facebook groups and stuff where people can tell you, oh, my Naomi's playing up. That looks like it's a graphical chip. It's this certain chip. Yeah, send it to America. You can get it done, or things like that. It's like people, because there's so many more collectors now. There's a better community for it. But before, it used to be, why you've got an arcade machine and nobody else had one, because you only really saw them in arcades.
So, what's your own relationship with arcade machines?
Oh. I was managing a nightclub a long time ago, and the owner of that nightclub owned a series of bookies and arcades and other nightclubs around Nottingham, and he had this warehouse that had a load in there. So I asked to buy one. I had to, like, it ended up that it was actually a bigger deal than I thought it was. I thought it was like, oh, if you're selling one, can I buy it? It's like, oh, you have to talk to the main guy. And he was like, the main guy of Nottingham who owns all this stuff is like, do you know how you can get novelty city versions of Monopoly?
Yes.
So he had the Nottingham one in real life and won. So it's kind of like he owns most of central Nottingham. So I went to buy it off him. I got it for incredibly cheap. I had to, had no means of getting it home, had to get a taxi. So I got one of those people carrier taxis, and we opened the sliding side door. We stuck it in. It was hanging out a bit.
What machine was it?
It was a Tekken 3 cabinet. I still have it. And yeah, I had it hanging outside the taxi. Someone was sat in there with a belt on, holding on to another belt and holding the top of the arcade machine outside the door to stop it from sliding. And then we loaded it into the house, and the Tekken board was problematic. I've still got it, but I had another board just in there that was untouched, and that was Tekken Tag. So I put that one on, and it had so I got Tekken Tag.
2 for the price of 1.
Well, I mean, it's one cabinet. It's just a couple of jammer boards. But yeah, but that was the thing. Like, yeah, generally you just put, like, these were just little things that, oh, they're not making any money now, let's put it there. This makes more money, and nobody like really cared about the odd stuff. So a lot of it is gone now, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a story, I don't know how recently, this might be 5 years ago recently in my head, especially with the last year, but there was a big ship, an old ferry in North Wales that had been, what's the grounded? Is that the term for a ship?
Well, it was retired, wasn't it? It was
yes.
It was.
And they had all those arcade machines in it, and it was like, it had been, because of like the climate of North Wales, it had been like preserved in like its 1970s state or 1980s state with all these like pristine arcade machines. And I remember for years and years driving and going past it on the train and being like, oh, it'd be cool to explore that boat one day. Just like as a teenager, go out with your mates. But there was actually cool stuff in there, and no one knew until they went in. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's a sound. Now and again you'll hear about treasure troves like that. There's a person that posted ages ago. This was on Gumtree. I used to do worldwide searches, not worldwide, nationwide searches on Gumtree, but that also picked up Northern Ireland, which is a lot harder to get to.
Yeah.
And this person had bought like a farm, and inside the farm were just tons and tons of really old cabinets and piles of manuals, which are obviously quite an important thing to keep for preservation as well. So I got in touch with him, and he had some like supreme name. He had like a really amazing, like Vincent Divine or something like that. I think, yeah, at first he's like, oh, I just want to get all these out. And then he had so much interest that he's like, oh, actually, I might be sitting on the trophy. So he started becoming a bit more defensive over it, which is right to do. And I think it got to one point where he's asking to maybe just pay for me to go over to Northern Ireland and fix them for him, so then he can decide what to do with them. And nothing really ever came of it, but that was yeah, a thing that happened. That was 2014, 2015. So it wasn't that long ago.
No.
If depending how far you want to go with not that long ago.
That would have been like an extended placement, wouldn't it? You would have been there for a few months.
Yeah, I've still got some of the photos. I can send them you after if I find them.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, what's out of the arcade machines that you've still got?
Yeah.
What's in your personal collection? So what's your most, oh, how do I phrase this? I don't want to go what's most valuable, but what is the most valuable to you? What's the, yeah.
Ooh. So my first one I still really like, because I replaced all the buttons and I'd put really nice ones in, and now it's a case of just I'll buy those in bulk, and it kind of changes. So my first one still feels amazing, like the joystick and the buttons, and like you can just sit and play with those with it not even turned on. God, this still feels really nice. And then so that one definitely has a place. I get excited about silly things though, Mikey. So you say like what has a value to me. I've got an Initial D arcade machine, and I get supremely excited because there's a song in it that's called Space Boy, and I just want to hear Space Boy all the time. So I'll play the game to hear it rather than go on YouTube and listen to it freely. I will load up the Naomi 2.
You don't want to hear that internet compression on that. You want to hear it, pristine from the speakers at the cabinet.
From a GD-ROM, because it was yeah.
There's nothing, nothing quite like it. So how this is probably a stupid question. How long does it take you if you were to play that game to get to the song that you want to listen to?
Oh, I can get the song on the first stage,
okay.
But turning it on, because I'm using a net dim on at the moment, so it takes it and it doesn't have a fresh battery in it, so it has to reload it from scratch every single time I turn it on. So
I was going to say, explain to me what you've just said.
No. Imagine if I left it like that.
Yeah. Move on.
So the GD-ROMs on Naomi boards are the same kind of ROM that was in the Dreamcast, which were notoriously breaky. With a net dim, you can find a way to load it up without using the GD-ROM. So I still have the GD-ROM, I still have the discs and the chips and everything, but there's this thing called a net dim in the top, which lets you connect an Ethernet cable. And I've got it connected to a Raspberry Pi that has the GD-ROM information on there and then sends it in. So it's just a way of circumventing using the SCSI cable and the GD-ROM. Okay. So yeah, we've got, we have to like, I think this has been done better since, but like I said, there's certain times when things were less easy to find on the internet, but we've got the Raspberry Pi itself pretending to be giving the information, but it also sends information every couple of seconds to make it so you don't need the security chip in there as well, which I think there's now a new way of fixing that, but this hasn't been updated since then.
Right.
But yeah, that can take about 5 to 10 minutes to load because it just goes through so much. But yeah, that's the one I'm currently fixing at the moment.
How often? Because this is kind of something that we touched upon in the first VHS with Dan Wood and Ravi Abbott of the Retro Hour.
Oh, Ravi. So Ravi and myself did an event together.
Right.
It was I get asked to do some weird events now and again, which I'm suppose we'll probably go talk about later on. But we did this event during the GameCity Festival called Awkward Games with Strangers, and I just got all these like people who didn't know each other playing really weird, awkward games together. So there's a game called Fingal on the iPad or iPhone where it's 2-player, and you just kind of have to like touch a square and then move in time for the square, and then it'll go to the next stage. But it ends up getting to points where your hands are touching each other and like kind of like certain bits where your fingers are interlocking in, not interlocking. It's just yeah, it gets a bit awkward. But obviously we're getting strangers to play that with each other, so it's just like 2 people sat across the thing. During this, to make it even weirder, we had a DJ who was Ravi, who was DJing from 2 Amigas, and renamed him DJ Equinox. yeah, it was just absolutely weird, and it was great. It was a lot of fun, but it was especially fun just making things get as weird as possible in an audience that don't usually find themselves in that kind of situation. There's one where we had people kneeling on chairs, so the chairs were back to back. They were kneeling on chairs and facing each other, and everyone else circled around them really close, which I know you can't do now, but and then they would have to give each other nice compliments. But then when the person gave the compliment, everyone would have to like talk about the compliment to make it even more awkward. So it's like me going, do you know what, Mikey? Your hair is amazing, right? And then we go, oh, he has got amazing hair. So like, obviously you're getting, yes. I loved it. I loved it so much. We got asked to do it again in a ball pit, but I felt as though I might have gone too far with that one. So it never happened.
That's amazing. And the more I hear about GameCity and the stories, the more I think that we need to have like an oral history project dedicated to keeping these memories on, because that is a great story. That is brilliant.
There's a GameCity Nights where we had Ian Livingston on, who I imagine you're going to talk to at some point, so you can ask him about this. And so I do it with Ian. Not Ian Livingston, Ian, our Ian. And it gets to a point where we're asking the audience for questions quite a lot. And it kind of starts off quite well, but it can start to lose a lot of momentum from there. And when it happened, I can remember, I think both of us kind of just getting a bit frustrated with it. So started just pretty much reading his Wikipedia to him and getting him to answer, but then just lying. So it's like, oh, your Wikipedia says you're a professional harmonica player. Now, before the gig, we knew that Ian likes to play harmonica. I'm going to say Livo, and so we know who. So we've got Livo and we've got Ian.
Because the other Ian is Ian Simons, who's the
yes,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Livo who's coming to play the harmonica during the gig. But it's like, oh, it says you're a professional harmonica player. And he goes, no, it doesn't. It's like being very kind of sensible about it. And he goes, I think you're just making that up. And obviously, I carried on. So I was like, well, the picture of you on Wikipedia is you playing a harmonica. And it's like, no, you're just being silly now. And then Ian opened up this little case of his harmonicas. He goes, what's this? You got like 15 harmonicas in here. And he goes, well, I didn't know what key we were going to play in. It's like, how can you say you're not a professional harmonica player? So we kind of just got this weird thing where we just kind of both hammering at him just with absolute lies, which I enjoy probably more than the audience, to be fair. But yes, that was it was. Then we had everyone singing "Boom Boom Boom Boom" from, you probably heard it in Blues Brothers by Lee Hooker.
Amazing.
But we had it video game related.
So what was the video game relatedness to it?
Up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right.
Nice. And then so with the audience all doing that.
Yeah, there's a guy who did a YouTube video review of it, and he turned up not knowing what was going on at all. He just saw this thing called GameCity Nights, and he thought it was just some people in a bar playing video games. And in the video, as it unfolds, he goes, yeah. And then we went in this room and there was a show going on, like a real show. And they had a live band. And then they had Livo. And then he's playing the harmonica. And he just shows clips of all this going on. Of just, people getting screamed at in the audience. We're dressing people up as parrots. Or a live action version of Untitled Parrot Game. Because we had the people from Housing. It was a good time.
Out of context, what you've just said are the ramblings of a madman, but in the context of GameCity, it makes so much sense.
If anyone wants to check out that video, it does actually put us in very good light. So I think the person who reviewed it is called Lucky Punch something. But if you're Lucky Punch GameCity Nights, there's a review in there, and you generally see a lot of shouting, some music.
So do you think that that's, obviously you couldn't obviously go up to someone's face right now and say, whisper sweet nothing's in their ear unless you know them, like personally.
Oh no, I just mean we've got social distancing.
Yeah,
I mean, soon as that social distancing's gone, I'm going to be all over you, Mikey.
So GameCity is the lineage of the museum, really, in terms of a sort of, because like Connor was talking about on the last VHS tapes, like digital games culture as an entertainment and as art installations-ish in a way. So how do you find yourself in that environment, and how does that relate to your work with Gamer?
Gamer, right. What, in art?
Maybe I've worded this. So what's your background with entertainment then?
Okay, there we go.
So that's simple.
I used to be, I'll do it in an incredibly short timeline, which was, I started working at a nightclub. I worked my way up to manager. I saw comedy for the first time, like live comedy. So I used to watch videos and stuff like that as well into comedy, but I never really saw it live. Saw a comedian called Phil Nichol, a Canadian comedian, very manic and excitable. Really, really liked it. Went, right, I'm going to get into that. So I started trying to do stand-up for a bit. And I started working at a comedy club called Just the Tonic. And I did lots of shows there. I didn't do any shows there. I didn't want to do my stand-up at the place I worked, because if you have a bad gig, then you've got that awkward situation. All right then. So yeah, I did a lot of gigs elsewhere. I ran my own little nights as well around. And then one year, I was kind of just after the NVA had opened, and I was kind of helping them out fixing a few things. I walked into the office, and all it was Daryl said, "Oh, we've had a space come available in the biggest room in Edinburgh. Do you want it?" And I think he was saying it as a joke, because obviously I'm not going to go up there and do an hour. I went, yeah. And from there, I was like, right, I'm going to make video games and comedy. So I started booking some comedians in to come and be guests on it. I got introduced to a few people who were doing things similar. And so I had to like kind of change how I was doing my thing to make it so it didn't feel like I was treading on people's feet. Mm-hmm. And yeah, went up to Edinburgh with a load of GoPros and tried to record as many as I could. But we had some amazing guests on it. So we had Dara Breen, Ed Byrne, Nish Kumar. There's a load of other comedians which aren't especially big on TV, but I hold in high regard, like Charlie Baker, Lloyd Griffith, Carl Donnelly, one of my favorites. Fortunately, and we're trying to get John Robertson, who you might know. He does a thing called Darkroom. He's had a game released on Steam, but it started off as a YouTube game, which is quite interesting. But unfortunately, his show conflicted with mine, so he could never make it down. So we're trying to like make this thing where it ended with him just running it on, because he worked on a TV show called Videogame Nation. And he just wants, we were going to try and make it so he just ran it at the end, just go Videogame Nation rules, and then pulls the power to the show. But we never managed to pull it off.
No. What's the so Gamer it's a panel show, pseudo panel show, right?
Yeah. So it's comedians come on to a stage, play and talk about video games, and we also tie in a little bit of chaos. Like anything I do generally comes off as a bit chaotic. If you've got this far and gone, this is generally everything. this is how I work, and I kind of like it. I like the outcome of that, which is a bit upsetting when somebody goes, "Oh, I've got your thing, but I've edited out the bits where it kind of went wrong." It's like, yeah, but they're the bits I want. That's the bit I find enjoyable. But so yes, it's a fine line, because obviously you can only go so far and it starts becoming too much of a mess. But doing the one show for an entire month, every day at the same time, makes it so you can really hone that kind of thing in. Then we did a few in Nottingham. I continue to do it in different places around the UK. And yeah, there's potential of it becoming more, but it's a lot of things happened that kind of slowed me down and changed it a bit, but hopefully it'll carry on. But Gamer is now becoming more of an umbrella to a thing of all the different kind of events we do. So Gamer, which is the one with comedians, I'll probably go change the name of that, because Gamer seems to be like the main umbrella for it all. So that'll probably be renamed something like Comedy 64 or something. Then we've got Complete-a-thon. I've got Beat the Elite, got Lucky Punch, got Awkward Games with Strangers. And there's a few other people I know who do events that are going to try and tie into it, but that's going to be a thing that's actually a marketable thing to any kind of pubs and stuff who want video game related stuff. Is Gamer can say, look, we can bring you a thing each week which will be different on a month rotation, and you'll have a lot of different things going on. So like there's a friend of mine who does video game quizzes, so he can go and do that and things like that. So it's actually more of a franchise, I suppose, to an extent, but just a bad one. It's a bad franchise. Okay.
You mentioned that your audience was students. So how is your work as a lecturer? So tell me about your work as a lecturer to start with. Like, give us the lowdown on what you do as a lecturer.
Well, I had done workshops and stuff in the past at universities like the University of Manchester and a few things around. And I'd been in discussions with somebody from Nottingham Trent University who was a fan of Gamer, but knew a lot of things that I did outside of that. Because one thing we haven't touched on in here is I also make games. This whole Video Game Heritage Society. Yeah, forget the bit where I make games. Anyway,
embarrassed.
He got in touch and he asked me to come and do some sessional tutoring for him. So we kind of worked out what modules he was covering. I worked out that I could make a game jam in that section. So I turned up to all these students, and I'd never done it on a case where I was seeing people like week in, week out before. This was the first time where I get to kind of build a relationship with people rather than going, all right, I've got 2 hours to get you all to like me enough that you're on board to do stuff that you wouldn't usually want to kind of get into. But at the same time, it was also over MS Teams. So I'm having to do it on a camera, this camera with that in the background, just going, who wants to make a game? So I did that and pushed them on there, got them to think about games from different angles, talking about mechanics and things of the like, which I was actually going to get into with you today. I was going to talk about continues. I had this whole bit about continues. You're going to love it.
We'll have to save that for part 2.
Okay. And then after that, I got an interview to become a lecturer. So I then started not full time. I started as a permanent lecturer for the university. So
how, I guess, what would be most relevant to what we're talking about today? How has game preservation and the preservation of like making games, because like that's your students are making games as part of the project, right?
So luckily I have a general quite large bank of knowledge in my head. So in long run, anything I can tell you could probably Google, and that is generally how the world works. But luckily I can pull those that information quickly and be able to hammer it out. So I have a lot of things where somebody mentions something, I could weave it into conversation. With this, I was telling them about game mechanics, for example, continues, and I would talk.
Go on. What's continues? Go on.
It's just the introduction of the mechanic of continues into games. It was a thing that never existed. It was somebody just went, why don't we introduce this? It was just, it's a phenomenal thing to me. It's almost like the birth of microtransactions, if you want to look at it that way. But it's a really interesting mechanic that I like to talk about. But less of that, because you're not interested. I would talk about all these games that they haven't heard of. So it kind of splits the room in a way that you don't expect, because people just go, oh, well, this is old. So they don't really care about the history of video games, but the only ways that video games get better is by making better versions of older things. Like Now, I'm not saying nothing new happens. For example, there was the Nemesis mechanic that was introduced. That was great. However, that was built on top of like an Assassin's Creed type feel below it, and then had this built on top of it.
The Nemesis thing you're talking about is from Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah. No, we could have just left it as Nemesis. yeah. From Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, yes. The Nemesis system that got patented. And how it's going to be hard to build on that because obviously there's a time limit now because you're not allowed to build on it for a while.
It does seem that from an outsider's perspective, that does seem like monopolizing something that shouldn't really be able to be monopolized. Do you know what I mean?
There are two sides to it. It's a bit of a difficult one, which is the people that maybe could have patented ideas and made some money from it aren't the people that can afford to really go through the steps to do that. So there's a game I especially like called Donut County, and I'm not sure of how much truth there is to this, but I'll tell it how I've been told, which is that they showed the concept of the hole moving around and things falling into it. And then the next day, a large company that made mobile games introduced exactly the same mechanic and released the game before Donut County was released. So not only did they see the mechanic, they had enough team to just hammer that out and actually get it done. This is how I've been told. This could be completely wrong. So I can't hammer that home enough. But
allegedly,
would it have been better for that indie developer to have patented that idea, but then would it have made it difficult for games to progress in the way they do? So it's an argument either way, which is patenting something will obviously slow down the progression of something, but at the same time, people get screwed over.
Hello, welcome back. I just want to thank Joe for joining me for that interview / chat. Bit informal at some points, but I thought you got a nice sense of insight about Joe's processes when he deals with repairing kit in the gallery. Really interesting talk about his legacy stuff. I say legacy, his relationship with Gamer, that comedy showbiz side of games that we too little hear about when it comes to preservation work. Do want to apologize for the overextensive use of the word like when I was talking about that ship in North Wales. I feel like I reverted back to my teenage self and I'm very embarrassed by it. Full disclosure, this specific bit was recorded after I've had a look through the video and did a bit of editing. Only a slight bit of editing, not that much. Can barely tell. Really excited about some of the stuff that's coming up with the VHS. I don't want to spoil anything now, but a nice diverse slate of content for you. Hopefully some more VHS tapes down the line. I say hopefully, I know that there will be. Be safe. See you all soon. Take care. Thank you for watching.